affidavit that was authored to generate headlines, not to reflect facts or evidence. The FBI seized over 56 devices in this case of all three of theirs, from their computers, their phones, their tablets, their USBs, Xbox controllers, anything that could store memory they seized, and for 18 months they conducted a forensic examination of all devices and did not come up with a single piece of evidence to support these allegations. I was at first appearance and I represented Ms. Cassini there, and I was there when the judge remarked that this shocks the conscience. And it does. It is truly shocking. When you read the probable cause affidavit, it is shocking. But what is even more shocking is after an exhaustive review of discovery conducted by multiple law enforcement agencies, there's not a single piece of evidence connecting any of these allegations to any of these defendants. There is no evidence that there was any live streaming of child pornography whatsoever. There is no evidence that they either accessed, viewed, posted any child pornography. There is no evidence connecting them to the Motherless website. There's no evidence they even accessed that website. There's no evidence of any sort of DNA here. There was no sex toys found in Ms. Cassini's room. There was no Venmo, Zelle, or any electronic form of payment for child pornography in this case. The Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office detective who authored this probable cause affidavit authored it full of lies and speculation that misled the public and almost destroyed three people's lives. We commend the state attorney's office for acknowledging the lack of evidence here, and also acknowledging the evidence that this was completely made up that we discovered, and dismissing the charges.
I want to comment on how this case began. Ms. Cassini's sons went to visit their father for Thanksgiving in 2023 in Ocala. It was by agreement. He was supposed to return the boys on Thanksgiving Day. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday came around. He wasn't returning the boys. She became distraught like any mother would. And then Monday, the Monday after Thanksgiving came around, and she learned from their schools in Boca Raton that they were absent. She did what any responsible parent would do. She called 911 to report that her boys had been kidnapped. She also told her ex that she was doing that. She said, "I am going to court tomorrow to get my boys back. I'm going to family court." Then, and only then, did this individual call the police in Ocala and report that she had sexually abused her sons. I do want to acknowledge the responding deputies, both here in Palm Beach County and in Marion County, because their intuition and their professionalism revealed on body-worn camera that they saw this for what it was, a calculated ploy to gain custody in a custody dispute. But from the start, because of the sensational allegations, this investigation was driven by hysteria and confirmation bias, not evidence. Ms. Cassini is not the monster that the public was led to believe. She is a devoted mother who fought tirelessly to protect her children, and she will continue that fight. This case began because she would not stop fighting for her boys, and as Mackenzie and I have come to know her, we know that she will not stop now. Because these boys are victims of manipulation, coercion, parental alienation. They were subjected to a campaign of brainwashing that separated them from their mother and distorted their sense of reality. Ms. Cassini's only goal has ever been to protect them and help them heal from the harm that was done. But this case also underscores the very real dangers of parental alienation and manipulation in custody disputes. The legal system can be, and too often is, weaponized by one parent against another. Walkiria Cassini, Brian Londano, and Matthew Cassini almost lost everything. They lost their jobs, they lost these boys, they nearly lost their freedom. We think it is very important that law enforcement receive better training to recognize the signs of coercion and influence, and to critically evaluate allegations that are made in the midst of family conflict before innocent lives are upended. And with that, Ms. Cassini has a statement she'd like to make.
I'm just really grateful that, I can finally, we're at the light at the end of the tunnel. God was very good in giving me the best attorneys anyone could ever ask for. We had a great team, great specialists, and they worked tirelessly to answer all the questions that I had no idea of. I had no idea why they were tying me to all these things, and it was very scary to not know. But I am very blessed that, justice prevailed, and today will be a start of the rest of our lives. And like they said, I'm going to continue to fight. I miss my boys very much, very dearly, and I want to see change. I want to see justice. I hope that there is never another woman or man out there that has to go through what we went through and potentially have their life destroyed because of a conflict with children. And I'm just very grateful that, the truth prevailed.
Thank you.
Ms. Cassini, I just can't imagine this nightmare. What was it really like to have to go through it, not only being separated from your children, but being in the criminal justice system, in court, your hands shackled?
I mean, it was horrible. It was very scary. The only thing I've ever really known was to be a good mom. And this all started because I wanted my children back. And I had a very toxic relationship I had getting out of, and he could not get over the fact that I left him. And yes, when this all happened, I mean, it was horrible. It wasn't just, my kids taken away from me. My entire character was assassinated. I had the last 20 years have such a good rapport with the physicians here in South Florida, and I had made a very good name for myself. I was climbing the corporate ladder. I had worked so hard, and I was, as a teen mom, I was very proud of myself. And everything was taken away from me. And then you're in maximum security. You're in a jail with people who committed murder. And it wasn't a good place to be, but like I said, throughout all this, there was a lot of blessings, and I've met and learned a lot of things there. My, faith with God has gotten even stronger, just because when you're in a situation like this, I mean, you will find out how very, very important it is to have some sort of faith and keep yourself sane. But it was probably the toughest thing I had. And then not only did I lose my two boys, but the only son I had left was also thrown into this. And that was devastating, because the one child who did fight for me ended up with me. And I couldn't speak to anybody. It was very hard, because I went from being a mom to nothing. And the career and everything, I can work hard, I can get stuff like that back, but the damage that this caused, it's irreversible. I mean, I can get strong and I can try to put one foot forward, but it was very difficult, and I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy.
Where are the boys now?
They're still in Ocala with their father.
You're kidding. I thought they were with DCF. Wow.
Oh no, DCF.
I can say on that point that the fight is going to continue to reunite Ms. Cassini with her boys. The no contact order in the criminal case has ended, but immediately after her arrest, the boys were permanently sheltered with the father. She was in custody in the Palm Beach County Jail. She couldn't contest that. And so that family court order remains in place until and unless we can dissolve it. And so that is among the many things that she wants to work on. That's certainly the next step is
But she definitely wants to fight to get her boys into a safe environment now and to be reunified with them.
So this man now has legal custody of the two boys in Ocala,
Yes.
and you're hoping to get them back, is that correct? So there's gonna be a court battle over that issue?
Yes.
Because unfortunately, the allegations were so heinous, and what I was explaining to every detective and anyone who's ever spoke to me in this case is, you have to consider, how do you win custody in a 50-50 state, full custody, when the other parent is responsible, has everything they need to take care of a child? You have to make them a monster. And that's what he did to me. And this was something that I've come to find out that was in the making for a very long time.
And we discovered text messages where Miss Cassini was letting her ex know that he wasn't taking the boys to school. He wasn't being a responsible parent. They had numerous absences in too small of a time frame. And she would inform him, if this continues, I'm going to take this issue to family court. And he could not probably afford to do so. And so the easiest and cheapest way for him to get custody was to launch these allegations.
So he spun this horrific web of lies, and yet he won. He's got the boys. He got what he wanted.
Well, like I say, you know, he won the battle, but we won the war, and this is going to continue. Lies can only go so far. The truth in the end will prevail. Now, I know the wheels of justice, they move very, very slow, but eventually you do get there. And it's unfortunate to find out that, you know, Mike wasn't the only evil person in this. There was a lot of other people that had their hands in this case that could have helped break the case and vindicate us way earlier on, and none of that happened. As soon as the allegations were heard, a lot of investigators had confirmation bias. They created a narrative just to fit the story, and that's very dangerous. And I pray that never happens to anybody again, because when you get arrested and you're sitting and hearing all this, you have to say, okay, well, they don't know who I am, but they're going to do their investigation, and next thing you know, like, we're going to be, you know, vindicated, and that never happened. And then all these things were brought to my attention that I had no idea about.
And Terry, to your point about whether he won, it's unfortunate, but we learned in the evidence in this case that he was so vindictive and so angry that Ms. Cassini had moved on. She was in a new relationship with a responsible partner, and she was really progressing in her career. He wouldn't let go. He was showing up at her house. And so by making these allegations, he not only got temporary custody of the boys, but he destroyed her career. And for 2 years, Ms. Cassini and Mr. Lindano couldn't have any contact. Today's the first day that they have been legally allowed in the same room other than at court appearances.
And what about Deputy Hoffman? Was that his name? You said
Detective
he
Hoffman,
lied in the probable cause. Can you expound on that?
Yes, some of the statements that were made in this affidavit, we have evidence to prove that they are patently false. The connection to the motherless account, just by way of example, there is no connection to the motherless account. Again, there is no evidence that any of these defendants ever even visited the motherless account. These were lies and speculations that took on a life of their own, and I think it got to a point where it was hard for her to have to back off of those.
It really was reckless speculation. I'll give you an example. In the probable cause affidavit, the detective references Venmo and Zelle transactions and ascribes the sinister motive that those transactions are tied to child exploitation. Well, we received in discovery the records from all of those transactions. It's 2024. People use Venmo and Zelle for everything. It was for her hairdresser. It was when she went out to dinner with her friends. And FBI agents actually followed up on those leads and confirmed that. But we had to really fight to uncover a lot of that evidence, in part because this was a multi-agency investigation, and some of the evidence was in the custody of the FBI, some of the evidence was in the custody of state law enforcement, and a lot of this speculation in the probable cause affidavit that we feel was written to sensationalize the story and gain attention. When we actually were able to scrutinize the evidence, none of it led to anything suggesting that these people had committed these horrific allegations.
Even the insinuation in here that there were sex toys that were found in Miss Cassini's room, there were none. There were none that were found. We did an evidence viewing, we went to PBSO, we had them unbox everything for us. There were no sex toys found in her room.
Ma'am, did you say what you do for a living?
Yes, prior to my arrest, I was a senior field sales associate with Boston Scientific, so I was in medical device sales, but my background was primarily in sonography with a subspecialty in men's sexual health.
So you were a medical device salesperson? And that's when you talked about your career, you're gonna try to rebuild your career.
Yeah.
So these boys for months were just lying, saying that I was taken into a bedroom and forced to have sex for people who were watching, and you were collecting money for that. They repeatedly lied over and over about that?
Yes. That is what the evidence shows. They were what we believe victims. They are victims for sure. Let that be known. They are victims of severe brainwashing by their father. It had been going on for over a year. There are text messages that we uncovered that show, again, just for example, a YouTube video from the father to the older son, where the YouTube video is talking about how all women are skanks and scum of the earth, and that sort of influence went on forever. And Miss Cassini also had a TikTok account where she gains a following for her business, and she was a sex positive sex education based on her background and her career.
It was focused on men's sexual health.
Yeah, posting videos, and he saw that, her ex saw that, and he started telling the oldest child that his mom is a prostitute, his mom is a whore, and that continued.
And with regard to the children's statements, we scrutinize those heavily. They are so full of not just inconsistencies, but very positive evidence of parental influence. And I don't want to comment in too much detail, but particularly for a 6-year-old who's really susceptible to manipulation, there were statements in there that a 6-year-old can only be making if he is parroting what a father is telling him. Grievances that he's airing to a forensic interviewer about financial matters between the parents.
Or who has ownership of the home, who has the deed to the home. Things that a 7-year-old would have no idea of.
And unfortunately, although it's very important that when children are interviewed after allegations, it's done by a trained forensic interviewer, those red flags were not followed up on at all. There was never a question of who is telling you that, where's that information coming from? And we were also fortunate to have very good experts in this case who were prepared. We were going to trial 2 weeks from today, who were going to hopefully educate a jury on those indicators of very clear parental influence.
How old are the boys now?
The middle one is going to be 17 in June, and the youngest just turned 9 on the 17th.
And wasn't there a lack of any physical examination? Didn't the father refuse?
Yes, the father refused the boys being forensically, receiving the forensic physical assault examination.
The father's lack of interest or participation from the very beginning, I think, was really important to us. In the body cam footage, even to the responding deputies here in Palm Beach County who are responding to this report of missing children, he's not picking up the phone to Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office deputies who are calling and texting, identifying themselves. The Marion County deputies, when speaking to Palm Beach County deputies, said this father really only seems interested in whether he can keep the boys or whether he has to return them. And then he refuses to make them available to for any sort of physical examination. He resists any further interviews with them. He refuses to provide his cell phone to detectives when asked. And so it really became clear that once he got what he wanted, which was that temporary custody, he wasn't interested in participating, because as the truth came out, the lie would really start to unravel, and it did.
How did the father convince the boys to keep lying for weeks and weeks or months?
We could only speculate, and we could only say that fortunately and really only very late in discovery in the case, we were able to obtain digital evidence of his communications, particularly with the 14-year-old boy at the time, and it was a sort of constant barrage of negativity about his mother, and sort of buying his affection, late night phone calls on WhatsApp, late into the morning till 2, 3 in the morning with the 14-year-old, and some discussions of the plan that you're going to come to live with me, and so unfortunately we do think that the 14-year-old was manipulated to go along with this. Our belief with regard to the 6-year-old is that he really didn't know what was going on, and that was actually the subject of some pending litigation in the case, was whether he would even be competent to testify, because his recollections and his story was very, very unclear, and so that was sort of
And just
part
to
of the case.
piggyback off that quickly, we also discovered text messages where the older son is texting his father saying he's doing things to look good for court, long before any allegations were made, and that shows that there was a plan in place.
So the father said to the boys, I want you to lie for me because you'd be better off living with me, and that's why I need you to come up with this story.
That's right, and unfortunately, Ms. Cassini was the responsible parent. She was very, very focused on them attending school. She was in touch with their teachers. What we saw in about the 2 years leading up to this allegation is that any time that the boys were with the father for a weekend, Monday would come around, they wouldn't go to school. He'd have an excuse every time. I don't get enough time with them. They can skip school today, and so as the maybe more permissive parent, he managed to convince the middle school, I guess a high school freshman child, that he would be better off with him. We feel strongly from what we've learned that they're clearly not better off there. It's actually quite sad what we've learned about the living situation and the lack of education that they're getting, and that's why our efforts to continue to save these boys from this harm are not ending just because the criminal case is over.
I mean, you have to understand that the boys are, especially the particularly the older one, who's, just becoming a teenager. He's going from two homes where one, mom has rules. You have to follow those rules. You have to clean up after yourself. You have to do your homework. You have to go to school. And then he's going to his dad's house where he doesn't have any rules and he can do whatever he wants and he can skip school and he can stay up all night. I mean, that's very enticing for a teenager, especially when it's going on for a long period of time.
Is there any potential for charges against the father? Is what he did not illegal?
That's a great question.
At this point in time, we can't comment on that. I will leave that to the state attorney's office, but no comment on that.
And what about the state attorney's office? You're at the eve of trial, and they were still pursuing this case. Was there like any final straw that they said, okay, we're dropping it? Why were they pursuing it in the face of, because you guys have been filing these motions, and
Yeah.
the previous attorneys filed many motions.
Yeah, well, what I can say is that after an extensive review, even though, yes, we are on the eve of trial, they did do the right thing, and we definitely commend them for that. It did take some time because the Palm Beach sheriffs didn't get the devices from the FBI until about the middle of the summer. And then, the investigation had to continue at the state level from there. I don't think that there was necessarily a final straw. It was an accumulation of the evidence, but ultimately they did the right thing, and we're very grateful for that.
Is there any potential for penalties against the detectives who you say lied?
That's something we're also not going to comment on today. I can say that today we're just so grateful that the criminal case is over, and Ms. Cassini's focus now is going to be on what she can do to help the boys. And also, I really think it has become something that she is passionate about, shedding light overall on this concern in the legal system that when family disputes escalate, lives can really be harmed, and so it's something that DCF and law enforcement need to be aware of and kind of consider allegations within that context. Of course, they have to take allegations like this seriously, but the lack of consideration of the context with a lot of evidence pointing to manipulation right from the beginning, I really think it's telling that the first responding deputies on the scene, their intuition was correct all along. And so there's certainly work to be done for Ms. Cassini personally and in the legal system as well.
Help me understand what you think motivated the detectives to act the way they did. Were they also tricked by the father, or did they believe that this was not what he said it was?
I think that in its simplest form, I think that they jumped the gun. I think that there was a premature arrest. I think that they wrote this probable cause affidavit before they had an opportunity to even review any of the devices and see if anything that they said was going to hold water. So I think that it was basically writing a big check that you can't cash.
I think confirmation bias is really dangerous in the legal system. In a lot of ways, this like truly sensational nature of the allegations, and then the sort of public interest in the case made it more difficult for law enforcement once evidence started coming in that you know totally disproved these allegations. It made it difficult for them to acknowledge that they had jumped the gun. But in a lot of ways, the sensational nature of the allegations were ultimately constructive, because we had these allegations of a mother and a completely innocent boyfriend and a son all engaged in this live streaming for commercial profit sex abuse. That was such a big lie that when a very sophisticated law enforcement agency like the FBI got involved and obtained 56 devices and found no evidence of it, it was in our minds very dispositive, and obviously to the state attorney's office as well.
Can I ask, Mr. Cassini, how did this affect your life? I mean, you're a young man just getting started. What happens when you're accused of this?
I did lose a lot of people close to me. Obviously, when everything originally happened, I was telling my close friends that my brothers had been kidnapped, and everyone already knew the story. So when our mugshots were posted, there was a handful of people that did know the truth, but it was just, I was attacked all over social media. They put my face everywhere, saying that I was a sexual predator. I was just starting to work on my school career, and it destroyed everything. It took everything from me.
Alright, thank you guys.
What city do you live in now?
I'm in Boca Raton still.
Okay, can I ask one more quick
Sure.
question? So, if this guy has ruined your reputation, are you able to sue him for slander or something?
It's something that I think is probably for the attorneys to consider, and again, the focus is on the boys today. The damage is very real that you're citing. Whether there is legal recourse for her is something I think that she can consider down the line.
Yeah, there should be some accountability, and I think it's important too, and I don't know if you guys are like aware of this too. During that week when he was saying that he was going to return the boys and he never did, when I called finally I told him I was going to call 911 for parental kidnapping, and then I called, he disappeared for like 5 days. Nobody, not one law enforcement, DCF, nobody could locate him or my children until Thursday. I was the one on the phone calling DCF. I even called Ocala to do a welfare check that Thursday because nobody could find him anymore. And when they made contact, I'm the one that called DCF and said, get over there now, because we found them, like they're there. And I think that's super telling as well, because if you really believed I did this, I mean, if the foot was on the other shoe and I thought this, I would be on the phone all day long with the police. I would be not hiding. Those boys would be visible. They would be out in the public. Like, I would be making a stance. And I think that was overlooked in the investigative process. Like, when you're hearing the story, like, I get it. You don't understand who I am, but you don't know this man either and what he's capable of. And I feel like in the end, I don't know how it's going to happen, but there should be some sort of accountability for what they did and the lack of stuff that they did as well for me. Or us.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
When can we expect that video?
Oh, did you get the email?
Oh, you already sent it?
Yeah.
No, I didn't check. Thank you.
Quick like that.
You were.
We're excited to share.
You fell out, yeah.
The body cam video you sent us is what? What is it?
It is the first responding officer here in Boca Raton, after she has called and said my boys have been kidnapped. He is, he came to her house at about 5 in the afternoon, and then the call comes in from the ex to Ocala saying the boys have been sexually abused. So that officer in Boca and his sergeant come back to Ms. Cassini's house, and they're outside the house. It's them on the phone with Marion County, and they're discussing this doesn't add up. I think that these boys are lying because they want to stay with Dad. She's the one who called the police, and they really want to know did she tip him off that she had spoken to Palm Beach County? Did she tip him off that she was going to court tomorrow? Because is that what triggered him?
Which she did.
Which
She
she did,
absolutely
and
did.
that was really in the
Yeah.
forefront of their mind. And I do think that road patrol deputies, they actually have great intuition, and one of the Palm Beach County deputies, he's done this for 25 years, and you know, we spoke to him at deposition, and he said, unfortunately, I see these kinds of allegations in child custody disputes very often, and I do what I have to do. I notify DCF, I take them seriously. Sometimes they're founded, sometimes they're not, but his intuition was very much correct in this case.
And his intuition was also based on his own experience as a parent. And he said, if this was my kids, I would have them there ready to speak with law enforcement. I'd be immediately in contact with law enforcement. These things aren't adding up for us.
Because this Palm Beach County deputy was repeatedly dialing and texting the ex in Ocala saying, give me some more information, I need to start an investigation, and the ex and the boys at that point have just disappeared.
Okay. Watch the video.
There's just so much here, and it really is, it was an eye-opening case, and
There's
we're just so
so much
grateful